Emily, my supervisor, stood uncomfortably on stage, her lips quivering and her face pale. "Strange, the documents are blank," she uttered. We were showcasing our company's most recent technological advancement at an international convention. Upon inspecting the documents Emily was carrying, I saw that blank sheets of copy paper had taken their place. Who could have taken such an action? However, there was no time to ponder. The room became agitated as the minutes passed and the presentation still hadn't begun. I turned to see Emily, who was attempting to clarify from memory, but her English was unsteady and full of grammatical errors. Even more unease crept into the room. I did something Emily never expected at that point. I reached for the microphone. "What?" she questioned, clearly surprised. "Why?" Disregarding her, I started speaking in English, using all the information I had committed to memory from the papers. There was a momentary hush in the room as I eventually finished, but nobody could have imagined what lay in store for them afterwards. A man came over to me after leaving the stage. Not wanting to keep anything from him, I informed him the university I had graduated from. "It seems that you weren't just anybody after all," Emily exclaimed, her astonishment evident. "John is my name. I work for a company that produces biomass energy as a regular employee. Just a year ago, I changed jobs, and I'm at the bottom of the technical department's hierarchy where I work. Even though the company is just 5 years old, it already has a large number of brilliant employees and is well known in the industry as a rising star. I once quit my prior work and spent some time roving around in the hopes of finding another one. My uncle Howard, who was also this company's president, saw my predicament and intervened, saying, 'John, if you haven't found your next job yet, why don't you come work for us? This is a great opportunity for you to apply the abilities you acquired at your prior work. How do you feel?' That's how I came to be employed by this organization. I wasn't keen to take the initiative at work when I first started at the organization because of some trauma from my prior employment. Even though my former employer was a large power business, there was a pervasive seniority system and cliques based on university affiliations. I was often left out because no one from my university was present. Even though I have a reasonable degree of expertise, I started to fall victim to the common tall poppy attitude that businesses have. My expertise must have posed a danger to individuals in those cliques. I was eventually written off without a word of defense or assistance. Since I didn't fit into any one clique, I couldn't tolerate to be treated that way, so I quit the company. I eventually came to the realization that my love for biotechnology still blazed brightly within me after some time spent aimlessly. That was among the factors that led me to accept my uncle's offer. My uncle has always impacted my interest in biotechnology. He treated me like his own son every time I visited because he doesn't have any kids. I had always wanted to work in biotechnology since I heard him speak so passionately about it when I was younger. From the beginning, I had thought about joining my uncle's company, but I also wanted to see how far I could go on my own. Ultimately, I was unable to tolerate the atmosphere at my former workplace and resigned. I felt saved when my uncle got in touch with me at the perfect moment. Even though Howard asked me to join this company, I was a little apprehensive when I witnessed the managers fighting about their university affiliations. I thought, oh no, this company has cliques too. But I wasn't sidelined like I had been before. Since I had already been given a good amount of work, I chose to keep quiet and do the tasks that were allocated to me. A coworker inquired, "John, which university did you go to?" However, I declined to respond. If they found out, I was afraid they would treat me the same way they did when I worked there. "He most likely attended a subpar school," someone said. "He's too embarrassed to admit it." Yes, how in the world did someone like that be hired by this company? Maybe it was just luck. Who knows? Exactly. Let's just assign someone from a mediocre university to handle the grunt work. They seemed to be satisfied after that, and they stopped inquiring about my past. But because of my supposedly inferior background, I was assigned menial chores all the time and treated like a rookie. Nevertheless, it was a completely different atmosphere from my former workplace, and even though I was performing the menial tasks, I was content with it. The IT division where I work makes decisions on how to design and promote the products that our company creates. It is essential for marketing, as well as for bridging the gap between the sales and development teams. Though the tech department, which decides how to implement such discoveries, is likewise full of highly educated people. Second only to the development team, the Department of Development consists of highly specialized professionals. My direct supervisor, Emily, is a beautiful and capable boss who graduated from Kyoto University. Then there's Mark, another manager who graduated from Tokyo University, and he's equally competent. Because of this, the two are constantly competing, viewing each other as rivals. While their rivalry is partly because they joined the company at the same time, it seemed like Mark had a particular grudge against Emily. Maybe something happened between them when they first started, but I had no way of knowing. I just assumed they couldn't stand each other. One day, as I was doing some menial tasks for Emily, Mark, always eager to take a jab at her, made a snide remark. "A third-rate university guy, huh? Looks like all you're good for is grunt work. Poor Emily, getting stuck with a subordinate like you. My team, on the other hand, is filled with top-notch talent. The company clearly knows who to bet on, and they've given me the best because they expect great things from me. Emily and this third-rate guy are clearly seen for what they are, unworthy. It's one thing to insult me, but why look down on Emily like that, Mark?" Just as I was about to retort, Emily cut him off with a sharp reply. "Mark, you seem to have a lot of free time, don't you?" "Oh, that's right. You can just leave everything to your brilliant team, can't you? Must be tough for them, doing all the work while you take all the credit. Keep that up, and they'll start leaving you one by one. But hey, that's not my concern. Just make sure not to cry when it happens. Your arrogance is only going to last for so long. Tisk, you're no fun. I was just trying to give you a friendly warning." "A warning? More like you're mocking me. Could you cut it out with the insults toward my team? I'm perfectly happy with John's work. And by the way, I'm busy. I don't have time to deal with someone with nothing better to do. Now please get out of my way and go back to work." Emily's fierce glare made Mark retreat back to his desk in defeat. I couldn't help but feel guilty that Emily had to endure such comments just because of me and my supposed third-rate background. "I'm sorry, Emily." "Why are you apologizing? You always do your job well, and I appreciate it. If anything, I should be the one apologizing for letting Mark say whatever he wants about you." "No, Emily, let him say what he wants. I don't mind." "Okay then, but let's keep up the good work. Now back to work." Having been worn out by all the cliques at my previous company, Emily's consideration was a breath of fresh air. She didn't judge me based on my university, but on the actual quality of my work. It was the first time I'd ever had a boss I truly respected. A new technology had just been developed by the R&D department, and it was handed over to our tech department. The innovation was groundbreaking, and upper management announced that it would be presented at an upcoming international conference in Japan. We're holding a competition within the tech department to come up with the best plan for presenting this technology. Whoever wins will get to present at the conference. Let's do our best to win this. Emily and the rest of us steadily prepared for the competition. I had a feeling she didn't want to lose to Mark. Mark, on the other hand, was telling his team, "We are winning this competition no matter what." He seemed determined not to lose to Emily. His competitive spirit was stronger than ever, and the atmosphere in the tech department was tense with everyone focused on the competition. In the midst of this, Mark kept targeting me more than usual. "This is an important competition for an international conference. People like you with no talent are just in the way. Get out of the tech department already." "Mark, what are you talking about? John is not incompetent at all. When he organizes documents, he picks out the key points perfectly. When I ask him to translate reports, he even includes relevant references. You won't find a more capable subordinate." Emily smirked. "Oh wait, I get it. You think you're going to lose the competition, don't you? That's why you're lashing out at someone as talented as John. Admit it, you're just jealous that I have such a great team member. Go ahead, say it." "Damn it, I'm not losing this competition." Unable to come up with a response, Mark stormed off angrily. I couldn't believe Emily thought so highly of me. I never imagined I'd be seen in that light, and I felt incredibly fortunate to have her as my boss. John, we don't have much time before the competition. Stop dawdling and get those documents ready. After praising me, Emily immediately switched gears and gave me a firm order before returning to her work. Both her compliments and her instructions made me happy. I wanted to win this competition alongside her. I was determined to do everything I could. That was my way of repaying her for her kind words. At my previous company, I never even felt like this. With her words echoing in my mind, I got to work. The day of the in-house competition arrived. Both Emily and Mark gave outstanding presentations, determined not to lose to each other. After a hard-fought battle, Emily emerged victorious by a slim margin. Mark's frustration was clear. Beside him, Emily stood with a hint of pride in her expression. I have to admit, I lost to you in this competition, but next time I'll make sure to win. I'm not planning on losing either, Emily replied. Well, for now, let's call a truce for the international conference. I'll help you with your proposal to make sure this project succeeds. Mark, determined to unite the tech department, aimed to move forward as a team. For someone like me, who had seen sabotage and underhanded tactics used to bring down rivals in my previous job, I was taken aback by Mark's willingness to collaborate for the company's success. But I realized this was how a company should ideally operate, and it made sense to me. With everyone working together, our department's carefully crafted proposal steadily progressed toward the international conference. The sight of Emily and Mark working side by side was almost dazzling to me. On the day of the conference, our company was honored with the final presentation due to the brilliance of our project. Normally, a major power company would close the event as the highlight, but Emily's proposal was so groundbreaking that even the experts were impressed, earning us that prime spot. The fact that our presentation was moved to the final slot showed just how high the expectations were. The tension increased, whether we liked it or not. At the time, we hadn't noticed the man who was bitter about us getting the final slot. We never imagined how it would escalate into the situation that unfolded. The presentation right before ours was by the major power company where I had worked. When I entered the shared waiting room, I saw several faces I wished I hadn't, and I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that washed over me. I tried to avoid eye contact, but my former colleague Miles approached me with a smug grin, as if he was amused by my discomfort. John, long time no see. So you couldn't make it at our company and ended up at some tiny firm. You've really fallen, haven't you? Well, at least you can still do your job, I guess. He mocked me with that same smug grin. Miles was a former colleague of mine. We had joined the company at the same time. He graduated from Tokyo University and belonged to a powerful clique. Because of that, he landed in important departments and steadily built up his achievements, while I, with no connections, was pushed into an insignificant role. And he took off and mocked me for it even after leaving that company. He's still belittling me. It filled me with frustration, seeing people I never wanted to meet again, being ridiculed by Miles. I started to regret coming here. Hey, is that you? Miles. Long time no see. I turned around, and there stood Mark. In my current situation, Mark's presence was a relief. He had accompanied Emily to the international conference to assist her with the presentation. Presenting at the international conference meant we were essentially representing the country. Failure was not an option. They were clearly taking every precaution to ensure success. Come to think of it, Mark graduated from Tokyo University. Is that why he knows Miles? As I wondered about it, Mark grinned and teased, Miles, you haven't changed a bit. Looking uncomfortable, Miles quickly said, Oh, long time no see. I've got to get ready, so excuse me, and hurried away. Mark, do you know Miles? Yeah, he was one of my students back when I was working on my doctorate. Oh, I see. Mark had earned his doctorate, and during that time, Miles had been one of his students. He's always been a sneaky guy. I wonder who he takes after. Still the same sarcastic type, too. Mark laughed as he said this, and I couldn't find anything to say in response. Mark's words hit the mark, but I had a feeling that if I said anything, he'd just mock me like usual. Miles worked in a different department, but he always found opportunities to belittle and harass me. He had always been that way, and I couldn't help but think, well, I guess he really does take after his mentor. John, we've got work to do. You're still the rookie, so get to it. Mark spoke to me in his usual commanding tone. Though it wasn't his intention, I felt like Mark had thrown me a lifeline, revealing an unexpected side of him. There had to be a reason why Miles had hurriedly left in such a panic. Finally, it was our turn to present. I was assigned to assist Emily and stood beside her. She carried the materials as we both stepped up onto the stage. The plan was to explain the project using the documents while referencing the visuals displayed on the monitor. But things weren't going as planned. When I looked over at Emily, her face had turned pale, and she was frantically searching for something. Even though she had the documents in her hand, something was clearly wrong. Emily, what's wrong? You look terrible. What's going on? With trembling lips, she muttered quietly, "This is strange. The documents are blank." Panicked, I quickly checked the materials. All the documents, which were supposed to be in English for the presentation, had been replaced with blank sheets of copy paper. On top of that, the laptop containing the data wasn't working. It wouldn't even turn on. Who could have done something like this? But there was no time for finger-pointing. Time was ticking away. The delay in starting the presentation was causing a stir in the audience. Emily tried to recall the information and began speaking, but she was too nervous, stumbling over her words and making mistake after mistake in English, which only caused the room to grow more restless. This wasn't going to work. I decided to go backstage and report to Mark that the materials had been stolen. "Mark, someone has switched the presentation documents with blank sheets." "What?" "Also, the laptop containing the data isn't working. Could you arrange for another one so we can access the files?" "Got it. I'll get it sorted right away." Mark went to the conference staff, explained the situation, and arranged for a laptop to be provided. Meanwhile, time was ticking away. The audience grew increasingly restless. I grabbed the microphone from a flustered Emily and, recalling the information in my head, began explaining in her place. I had been involved in the preparation for the conference, compiling references, organizing materials, and making copies. Since I had reviewed the documents so many times, all the information was stored in my memory. Using that knowledge, I explained the project in English, matching my words to the slides in front of me. John, why? Emily later told me she was surprised by how fluent my English was and how confidently I presented the project. Snapping back to reality, she left the stage, trusting me to handle the rest of the explanation. In the meantime, Mark had managed to get a laptop, and he and Emily returned to the stage just as I reached the latter half of the presentation. I felt a wave of relief. Though I had most of the information memorized, there were still parts I wasn't sure about. With the laptop up and running, I continued my presentation, now able to check the data as I went. When I finished, there was a brief silence, followed by thunderous applause. Cheers of bravo echoed through the room. Though it had started off rocky, in the end, everything turned out well. Our project presentation was a success. I bowed and stepped down from the stage. Even then, the applause didn't stop. Finally, it was over. I felt an overwhelming sense of relief, but just as I relaxed, my legs gave out, and I collapsed right there. Seeing this, Emily and Mark rushed over, supporting me by the arms as they helped me backstage. "John, great job. Your English was so fluent, and I'm amazed." I was so nervous that my mind went blank, and I couldn't think straight. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in. Thank you. "Yeah, John, you were incredible. Not just with your English, but how confident you looked up there." Emily and Mark praised me for my performance. I blushed a little from their praise. Just then, a gentleman approached me. The foreign man walked up, hugged me, and exclaimed, "I knew it. It's you, Johnny. You're Johnny, aren't you?" "Who is that?" Emily and Mark asked in surprise. "Mr. Smith, it's been a long time," I responded. "Mr. Smith?" Emily and Mark looked at me curiously. Since Mr. Smith would probably explain things anyway, there was no need to hide it. After all, they were the ones who had praised my speech earlier. For the first time, I mentioned my alma mater. Mr. Smith was my professor at Harvard and also my academic advisor. What? Harvard? They both exclaimed in unison. I replied with a sheepish smile, yeah, more or less. Mr. Smith said, that's right. Back in his Harvard days, Johnny was an excellent student and graduated at the top of his class. Top of the class. Once again, Emily and Mark were shocked. Mr. Smith continued speaking, barely noticing their reaction. You were incredible during that presentation, as always. I'm so proud to see you're still doing great things. Mr. Smith gave me a hearty pat on the shoulder and laughed cheerfully, his face beaming with a broad smile. Well, I hope we meet again soon, Mr. Smith said and walked away. A long silence followed, and when I looked at Emily and Mark, they both had furrowed brows, clearly deep in thought. Feeling uncomfortable, I straightened myself up and tried to quickly make my way back to the waiting room. So you really aren't just anyone, are you? It was Emily who broke the silence. She, who had always observed my work, smiled and said, "You never mentioned you're an alum of MIT, so everyone assumed you went to some third-rate school. But from the way you organize documents and the precision of your reports, I always knew you weren't from some mediocre university. But still, graduating at the top of your class at Harvard? You never cease to amaze me, John." She said this with a smile. Yeah, whether it's Tokyo University or Kyoto University, there's no competing with Harvard. Even Mark, with a grin, agreed as he said that. No, I just got really into biotechnology, that's all. It's not such a big deal, I said, trying to downplay it. What are you talking about, Mr. Top of the class? Once again, they were perfectly in sync, laughing together. I used to think they were like oil and water, but to see them this in tune, it was like they were reading each other's minds. It seemed like their teamwork on this project had forged a sense of camaraderie, creating an atmosphere only the two of them could understand. After that, we discovered who had stolen Mark's documents. Emily, we caught the guy who stole the documents. What? Who is it? It was someone from the major electric company before us. You know him, John. It's Miles. Mark found it hard to believe that one of his former students was the culprit, but it also made sense. Back in his school days, Miles used to turn in reports that others had written for him, and he would even steal other people's research ideas and pass them off as his own. His father was a professor at Tokyo University, so many students felt they had no choice but to comply with the pressure. Even Mark couldn't resist it at the time. It seemed like Mark had joined this company to escape those chains. I realized that Mark had his own struggles, which made me feel unexpectedly close to him. I noticed Miles acting suspiciously in the waiting room. He always gets nervous when he's up to something. He was like that in college too. I suspected he might be involved, so I confronted him. He tried to hide a paper bag, but when I snatched it from him and checked inside, sure enough, it had the documents for the competition. Mark said, laughing. I was impressed by how well Mark knew his former student, Miles. Thanks to Mark, we were able to catch the culprit. Regarding Miles's fate, Emily said, from here on, it's best not to act on our own. We should leave it to the company's lawyers. So we decided to head back to the office. I felt sorry for Miles, knowing that after building up his career so far, there was probably no future left for him at the company. However, considering what he had done, I felt he deserved the consequences. After that, Emily, Mark, and I returned to the office and reported everything to President Howard. It must have been tough, but it looks like the project presentation went well. Great job, everyone. President Howard, thoroughly satisfied, praised and thanked us for our hard work. Mr. Howard, did you know that John graduated at the top of his class from Harvard? Emily asked. Of course I knew. He's my nephew. After he left his previous job and hadn't decided on a new company, I invited him to join us. What? Why didn't you tell us that? Well, John told me that his background caused him problems at his last job, and he ended up getting sidelined because of it, so I thought it would be better to keep it quiet this time. He also asked me not to mention that he was my nephew. He spoke clearly, flustered by Emily's intense demeanor. Cats hide their claws. That's John in a nutshell. I'm lucky to have such a skilled subordinate. Now I'll have to make sure he keeps up the hard work." With that, Emily flashed a confident, sly smile. "Yeah, if he's that good, he'll have plenty of work coming his way," even Mark said, giving me a pat on the shoulder. Seeing the look in their eyes as they agreed, I felt a cold sweat run down my back, sensing an indescribable fear. I truly owe a lot to my uncle, President Howard. If it weren't for him, I might never have escaped my disillusionment with people. Needing a boss I could respect helped reignite my passion for biotechnology. Later, Miles ended up being forced out of his company. Whether it was the company's decision or his own, we never found out, but his company's official stance was that it was his decision alone. We heard about it from President Howard later. Despite his loyalty to his faction, not even they would stand up for Miles. It might have been a reflection of the culture at the company. After that, I unexpectedly found myself promoted to the position of project leader. It was also a recognition of the success of the international conference, but the role of project leader was really just a glorified assistant to Emily and Mark. Proof of this was how, despite being Emily's direct subordinate, Mark would also take advantage of my position. "Emily, it's not fair for you to have John all to yourself." "What are you talking about? John is my capable subordinate. There's no way I'm letting him be your lackey." As Mark tried to pull me along, Emily stopped him and firmly said her piece. Watching the two of them bicker over me was like seeing children fighting over a toy, and I couldn't help but find it amusing. I find their daily back and forth quite endearing. They've probably been aware of each other since they started at the company, but being rivals seemed to have drawn a line between them. If I noticed it, I'm sure everyone else had too. The only ones unaware were the two of them. There they go again. Emily and Mark are at it. Honestly, it's like they're always fighting over nothing. They might as well just get together already. Yeah, but wouldn't they just fight every day if they did? Who knows? Mark might end up completely under Emily's thumb. Yeah, you're probably right. I overheard these murmurs among our team. "What are you talking about?" Emily asked. Nothing at all." They exchanged glances and laughed. Thinking back, maybe their cooperation during the international conference came from them not really disliking each other after all. I believe that rivalry begins with mutual recognition and respect. It's rare to find someone who can push you to grow and improve like that. Seeing how much they appreciate and think of each other, I can't help but think, why don't they just get together already? Someday, I'm going to tell them exactly that, since they're both completely oblivious to each other's feelings.